Today's daf we're going to be learning is Chullin daf Nun Chet. This is the daf for Shabbat. We're going to get started with a meimer at the bottom of Nun Zayin Amud Bet. So a meimer says, Hane bei de treifa, if you have an egg from a treifa that came out of a bird that was a treifa, shichala kama asira, the first brood that comes out, or the first clutch, okay, that's what the Koran calls it, the first clutch. It means the eggs that are already in the bird at the time it became a treifa, when they come out, they're asira, they're forbidden. Mikan va'elach, havale zev ze gorem o mutar. But anything else, any eggs that are formed after, because takes two to form the egg, okay, we're talking obviously about fertilized eggs. We're going to talk soon about unfertilized eggs. But fertilized eggs, which come from a male and a female, so those have two elements that caused it to become created. And that's called zev ze gorem. Two different things are contributing to it. And we rule, even though we're going to see a machloket about this soon, zev ze gorem is mutar. If you have two things, so let's just go back for a minute, because I really forgot to mention to you why this first shichala kama is asira. The eggs that come out of this hen, okay, let's just call it a hen, the eggs that come out of there, the first ones, the ones that are already formed in her body and then they're laid after. So anything that comes, if the hen became a treifa, there's this concept that we're going to see in the Gemara soon, but Rashi already points it out here, ubar yerech imohu. The fetus is a part of the mother's body. Okay, now here we're talking about eggs, but the eggs, because they're in the mother's body, they're a part of the mother. So if the mother becomes a treifa, the eggs are treifa, whatever's in the body. But anything that's formed, theoretically, the part that the mother creates is theoretically a treifa. But there's a part that the male creates, and that's not a treifa. And that's the zev ze gorem. Two different elements. We've had this sugya before. Two different elements contribute to it. It's permitted. That we're going to see is the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua. Eitave Rav Ashi la meimer. But Rav Ashi says to a meimer, v'shavin, now there's a machloket, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, about, well, we're not sure what it's about, but according to the way we're going to read the sugya soon, even though we're going to have two different interpretations, it's about whether the vlad of an animal can be used as a sacrifice or not, if the animal is a treifa. And then the fetus of that animal, when it's born, can it be used for a korban or not? So one says yes, one says no. The Gemara is going to assume it's because of this machloket, zev ze gorem, is it permitted, is it not permitted? But Rav Ashi says to a meimer, if you look there, shavin, there's a braita there that says, okay, there's a machloket Rashi tells us whether we're talking about a braita or we're talking about some Mishnah in Eduyot. I'm not going to get into that right now, but let's just assume it's the braita. V'shavin bebeitzat treifa she'asura. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, who disagree about the vlad of an animal, whether it can be used on the altar or not, agree about the beitz of a treifa that it's forbidden. Mishum shegala b'isur, because it grew up. Okay, we'll have to translate exactly what this word means, gadla, but it grew grew b'isur, in forbidden, meaning in a forbidden body, in a body that was a treifa. So how could you say the eggs that are grown in this hen are going to be forbidden when we just said, well, zev ze gorem, there's two parts that contribute to it, and that's going to be permitted. And Amemar said that's going to be permitted. Only the shichala kamas, only the first ones that come out, they were already formed in the womb, in the body of this, not the womb, okay, but they were formed in the body of this hen. Only those are forbidden, but the rest are permitted. This seems to say they're all forbidden, even ones formed later. So they say, hatam b'desafna me'ara. These are unfertilized eggs, the ones that are created from the ground. Okay, that's what they call it. Okay, but basically there's no male. When there's no male, well, then you don't have zev ze gorem, two parts that contribute that are going to make it permitted. Okay, and with that, we resolve the problem. To which the Gemara says, wait a minute, why don't you just simply answer in a different way and say that source that we just quoted, they all think it's asura, maybe they're talking about v'lishana leb'shichala kama. Maybe they're talking about the first clutch that comes out. Im kain gadla gamra mebayale. Well, then the word gadla, now I said we talk about this word, gadla makes it sound like it grew, meaning it was formed that way. And if you wanted to say because it was born b'isur, because it came out of the mother, and it was already formed before, and then the mother became a treifa, it became a treifa with the mother, it should have said gamra, it finished, right? Not it grew, but it finished b'isur. So the wording doesn't seem to match the shichala kama, and that's why we answer it must be unfertilized eggs. Ella haditanya, but wait, here also, if we're going to assume it's the Braita, it should be Ditanya, not Ditnan, even though it says Ditnan here. And like I said, Rashi, Tosfot have his machloket here, what Mishnah we're quoting exactly, but we'll go with Haditanya, we'll stick with Rashi. Vlad Treifa, but what about the fact that we have this Braita where Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua disagree? Vlad of a Treifa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Lo Yikrav L'Gabei Mizbech, for Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Yikav. And here they have this machloket, right? Now, this isn't a question, actually. This is proving what we just said. When we have now the Mishnah with this machloket between them, b'mai kamiflage, what's the root of their machloket? B'shenitrefa ulevasof ibra. It must be a case of lad treifa. Again, there's two situations. Either it was a treifa and then got pregnant, or it got pregnant and then became a treifa. So this is b'shenitrefa ulevasof ibra. Must be became a treifa and then got pregnant, and it's a machloket about zev zegorem. That's exactly what I told you before. Rabbi Eliezer savar zev zegorem asul, Rabbi Yeshua savar zev zegorem mutal. So Rabbi Eliezer thinks if there's two things contributing, it's going to be forbidden. And Rabbi Yeshua says if there's two things contributing, it's going to be permitted. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer says it still has the forbidden hen, who's a treifa. So it doesn't matter that there's a rooster. It doesn't matter that he's okay, but she's not, and that contributes, and that makes the vlad, the fetus, the chick that's born is going to be a treifa. And Rabbi Yeshua says no. And what we saw before Amemar, he held like Rabbi Yeshua. Okay? Now, so I should say, I didn't really say this well, because it's not about the bird. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer both agree about the bird. Why do they agree about the bird? Because the bird is a case where there is no male. And the machloket is specifically about animals. Again, they would also disagree about a bird in a similar case as the animals, but their disagreement is about the animal, male and female animal. If the female is a treifa and the male is not a treifa, according to Rabbi Eliezer, it will be a treifa like the mother, like the female. And according to Rabbi Yeshua, it will not be a treifa because when the two combine, right, he says that already makes it permitted because the male is fine. Now, that's the machloket between them according to our interpretation so far we've seen in the sugya up until now. To which the machloket, the Gemara asks, wait a minute, if their machloket is all about zev zegorem, and that's the root of their debate, which again, it never said that anywhere, the Gemara is just explaining it that way. Something doesn't jive here, because if their argument is all based on zev zegorem and the vlad of an animal, is it a treifa or not? Why are they talking about can it be brought on the altar or not brought on the altar? They should be talking about is it a treifa, is it not a treifa? Which is the way we explain the machloket, but that's not what it's talking about. It's actually talking about, I'm just going to go back again. I think I didn't stress this enough. Vlad treifa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer lo yikrav l'gabei mizbeach, it cannot be brought on the altar, and Rabbi Yeshua says it can be brought on the altar. So why wouldn't they have an argument about is it a treifa, is it not a treifa, which is what the main topic is. So the Gemara says, Lahodiacha kocho de Rabbi Yeshua. The reason why they chose to bring the debate specifically, can it be brought on the altar, where it would obviously be the same debate about is it a treifa, is it not. If we were just talking about can you eat the meat, right, not having to do with any sacrifice, well, they could have said that, but why they specifically choose sacrifice? Because they wanted to tell you kocho de Rabbi Yeshua, that Rabbi Yeshua even permits it for the altar. He says this is so not a problem because zev zegorem is permitted. You can even use an animal like that on the altar, even though its mother was a treifa. Dafilu legavoa nami shari. Even for gavoa, even for a higher purpose, for the temple, you can still do it. So the Gemara says, I don't get it. If you want to show the power of this opinion, why don't you say the power of the other opinion? Lif legube hedyot. It should say we should talk about it's a treifa, even according to, right? In other words, lo diacha kocho de Rabbi Eliezer. Dafilu lehedyot nami asur. The Rabbi Eliezer forbids zev zegorem to the extent that not only for a sacrifice can't you bring it, but even a regular person can't eat it. That's also a koch. If you want to highlight the either the leniency of Rabbi Yeshua or the stringency of Rabbi Eliezer. They're both showing extremes, so why don't you say the other way? So they say koch de hetera adifle. We'd rather focus on, so it's a good line, it's much easier to be stringent. It's much harder to permit. So they really want to show, look at what they really want to highlight was look at Rabbi Yeshua. He's willing to even permit it on the altar. That's a much bigger deal. Okay, now we're just going to go back to this one line that we mentioned before and explain it, even though we already know this, but they're just kind of closing up the sugya with this. Umodim b'beitzat trefa she'asura b'desafne me'ar decha gorim hu. Now, if we already said the whole machloket is zev ze gorim, and we started kind of backwards, we brought in the beginning as a difficulty to the statement of, okay, if we just review the sugya, we started with Amemar, talked about the beitza of a treifa, the first clutch can be eaten. After that, it can't be eaten. Why can the first clutch be eaten? Don't we have a brayta that says they all agree that the beitza of a treifa is forbidden, right? The egg from a treifa is forbidden. And then we explain that, that's b'desafra me'ara, right? That's only when there is no other factor that's factoring in, no gorem, right? There's no male. And then they said, right, and then they asked a question on that, they resolved it, and then they went back to the Brayta and they said, look, the Machlok of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua is based on Zev Ze Golem, is it Mutar Asur? They then brought the real basis of the whole Machloket, because we started with, they both agree, but what was the Machloket? The Machloket was in this case of a vlad of a treifa, and can it be brought on the sacrifice as an altar, on the altar or not as a sacrifice? We then explain the Machloket, explain why they specifically brought the case of sacrifice when it would be true for treifa as well. And then we want to go back now when we said they both agree about the beitza of a treifa. What's the reason? They're just reviewing. It's a case where it's an unfertilized egg. There's no male. Dechad gorim hu. There's only one factor, which is the hen herself. And since she's a treifa, the vlad is a treifa. Okay, that was nothing new, that last line. It just kind of summed up that line that we talked about before. Okay, that was all the first version of the sugya. Now we're going to hear a different version. And based on a certain approach, okay, we're going to see that we're going to see that there's a different way of reading the whole sugya. Rav Acha savar like Rav Acha bar Yaakov. So Rav Acha held like Rav Acha bar Yaakov, who held that, okay, he held on Daf Nun, it was Nun Zayin, that the halacha is a treifa yoledet. A treifa can give birth, okay, meaning she can get pregnant and give birth. But, and that's why, and that's why he taught this case of Amemar, because what was the whole thing of Amemar? The first clutch is a problem, but any subsequent eggs of this treifa are going to be fine. Now, why is that? And it's because of Zev Ze Gorim. But you can only say that if the bird who's a treifa, if the hen who's a treifa, can actually create more eggs and lay them. Okay? But Amar Amemar, okay, no, sorry, I skipped a line. Ravina lo savala lahad kid Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He didn't hold like Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He thought that a treifa can't create eggs and lay them. Umane la Amemar b'hai lishan. And he taught what Amemar said in a different way. Amemar couldn't be talking about a treifa having, creating eggs. It's not possible. So Amar Amemar, what Amemar said, according to Ravina, was the following. Hane bei de sefek treifa. These eggs that are a sefek treifa, that we're not sure if they're a treifa. Okay, we don't know if the hen is a treifa or not. So what do? De shich lakama mashkinan lehu. So we leave the first clutch and we put them aside and we wait. We do a waiting game. I hadra vitana sharian. Vilo asiran. If she can create more eggs and lay them, then we know that the hen is not a treifa. And then we can eat the original ones. Vilo, but if not, if she never is able to lay any more eggs, then asiran. Then the original clutch is forbidden because they're coming from a treifa. Then we know she's definitely a treifa and then it's not permitted. Because again, those were in her body at the time and that's ubar yerachimo, right? We assume whatever's in the body is treated like the treifa herself. Now we're going to have a similar structure of the sugya, but it's going to be on this version of Amemar instead of the previous. Umodim, now it's going to be the same source. Umodim bebeitzat treifa shasura mipnei shegadla beisur. Now the beitza, they both agree that the beitza of a treifa is forbidden because it was created, gadla, which we explained before means created, in a forbidden manner. Now wait a minute. If you say a treifa can never create eggs anymore, then she can't have created eggs because she's a treifa. So that sentence makes no sense according to what we just said. So Amar Lahem. So what does he answer? He answered, and as Rav Ashi said this to Amemar, and Amemar answered back, Hatam b'dishich lakama. No, gadla b'isur doesn't mean they were created b'isur. It means they were hatched b'isur, right? They were laid b'isur. Okay, that she took them out of her body b'isur, the shich lakama. She was already, quote unquote, not really pregnant with them, but right, they were already formed. Okay, so they say, what do you mean? That doesn't match the language. We already went to this from the previous sugya. Im ken, in the previous version, im ken gadla, gam amibayle. It should have said because they were gam rabis, or they were finished when she was already a treifa. Tane gamba. Okay, so change the word to gamra instead of gadla. Okay, not the biggest difference, right? 2 letters off, fix it, and that now makes sense. Okay, now elahaditna. Now we have to reread the Vlad treifa according to this because. Right. In the previous, how did we say the Vlad Treifa? It was nitrafa and then became pregnant. Now, according to this version, if you're nitrafa, as an animal or a bird, it doesn't matter, you can't become pregnant. So, elahaditan Vlad Treifa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, we thought it was v'zeh gorem, which has to do with being impregnated. The male obviously isn't relevant once she's giving birth. So, Rabbi Eliezer Omer lo yikrav l'gabei mizbeach, Rabbi Yeshua Omer yikrav b'may kamiflege. What's the root of their machloket? You would have to say she was already pregnant, then she became a treifa. Now, what's the machloket? Rabbi Eliezer savar ubar yerech imohu. Rabbi Eliezer says the ubar is part of the mother. So, if she became a treifa and she had a fetus inside, then the fetus assumes her status and can't be used. Rabbi Yeshua savar ibar lav yerech imohu. And Rabbi Yeshua, who permits, said we don't view the fetus as a part of the mother. The mother's a treifa, but the fetus can live. So the fetus doesn't have a status of a treifa and can be brought on the altar. Now we're going to say again the same thing as we said earlier, which is if the whole machloket is ubar yerechimo or not yerechimo, is the fetus considered a part of the mother's body or its own distinct part of the mother, right? Separate from the mother. And it's a fascinating question in general. How do we view fetuses? But okay, wait. The machloket, why is it about a korban then? It should be about a regular case, right? Any kind of kashrut issue. So the answer, just like before, lahodiach, because again, this is a parallel version. The kind of things happen in the same way, but there was one, the beginning made all the difference. That are we talking about a sefek treifa, or are we talking about a definite treifa? Are we talking about, right, what's the machlok between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, right? It has implications, but the structure of the sugya is the same, which is, okay, well then why say korban and not regular kashrut? Because we want to show, look, Rabbi Yeshua even permits it. He says ubar is so not part of the mother that we can even sacrifice this on the altar. So again, they're going to ask, why don't we say? No, but it's such a big chiddush that Rabbi Eliezer is stringent. So again, we'd rather stress the person who's willing to be lenient. Okay. Now, finish up like last time. Go back to that line, umodim, Rabbi Eliezer. Umodim, vadai, they definitely agree, bebeitzat treifa she'asura. What does that mean? What kind of beitzat treifa? There is no such thing. She can't create eggs, so it must be b'deshich lakama. That's the first clutch that's already in her body. Well, that, when it comes out, is going to be forbidden. My taima gufahi. That's because the eggs there are just part of her body, basically. Okay, we view the eggs of the bird as just part of her body. The hilchatan, okay, that's different than the fetus of the animal. The hilchatan, now the halacha is that bezachal, second, right, Rashi says, by the way, the vada beitza b'jeshich lakama, because they're agida ba de mu'ure begidin kigufa damya. They're like within the sinews of her body, and they're really considered like her body. Okay, now this one last line of this sugya, and then we're going to move on to another thing, although this is going to kind of lead us to the next section, which is v'hilchata b'zachar kol shnei masar chodesh. How do you know? In a sefek treifa, what do? You wait 12 months. If it's a male, if it survives 12 months, then you know it's not a treifa anymore. B'nikeva kol she'ena yoledet. But based on what we just learned, if she actually has offspring, she gets pregnant and has offspring, then we know that she's not a treifa. So if that happens within 12 months, then we already can say we don't have to wait the full 12 months because we can see if she doesn't give birth, then that means she could be a treifa, and then we wait the 12 months. But if she does give birth, then we know that, again, if she gets pregnant and gives birth, then we know that she's not a treifa anymore, and we can already take her out of that category even before the 12 months have elapsed. Okay, now Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says the following statement. Kol b'riah she'ein bo et. Right, so until now we had two versions of what Amar was talking about, how it related to the sugya of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, and how we understood the machloka between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua about a vlad of an animal, and why that's different from the vlad of a bird. And the two premises of these big debates are either Zev Ze Golem, is it Mutar Asul, or is Ubar Yerech Imo or not? Right? How does the fetus factor into the mother's body? Is it considered just part of the mother's body, or is it a separate part? Amar Rav Huna, Kol Bria she'en bo etzem, eino mitkayem 12 chodesh. If you have a creature that doesn't have bones, then it's not going to survive 12 months. And it doesn't have a lifespan more than a 12-month lifespan, okay? Because we were talking about a minute ago that Zachar was a treif, it doesn't have more than a 12-month lifespan. Now we're talking about a creature that, and we're going to see the relevant, some ramification of this, but a creature without a bone will not survive more than 12 months. Amar Papa Shmami Namidu Rav Huna had Amar Shmuel. From what Rav Huna just said, we can now understand the statement. What Shmuel said, it seems like they maybe didn't really understand this so well. Now we're going to understand it. To Amar Shmuel. The first part is not really connected. The second part is going to be much more connected, although the second part is built on the first part. Kishut she'etliya bi'ibeha asura. Okay, according to the Koran, kishut is called a serpent melon. Okay, it's a type of fruit. So this kishut, okay, that was worm infested while it was in the ground is forbidden. Okay, what are we talking about forbidden? We're talking about the worm itself. Okay, the worm, just one second. Yeah, it's a type of, by the way, it's an Armenian cucumber, according to the Koran, which is called a serpent melon. I don't know why. Okay, anyway, it's not really important what it is. What's important is this halacha. You can't eat creatures that are shoretz ala aretz, that crawl on the ground. Now, if you have a creature that's living in a fruit, it's not really crawling on the ground. But if the fruit is attached to the ground, then even if it hasn't moved, although some people say it has to move within the fruit, okay, there's a machloket about that. But if it hasn't moved on the ground, because it's now the assumption here, just one other thing you have to understand, seems to me like what they're talking about is they think that creatures like worms are created, like they come about inside a fruit, okay, either inside a fruit that's in the ground or inside a fruit that's not attached to the ground. So if it's created and kind of like it starts off, it grows in this fruit that's attached to the ground, it's considered a sheretz that's forbidden by Torah law to eat. Okay, we're going to see today, by the way, that there seem to be certain types of worms that you actually can eat. Not that I'm recommending it, but if it was on the ground, and there's in this fruit that was on the ground, or vegetable that was on the ground, then it's considered a sheretz that shoretz ala aretz, okay, that crawled on the ground, even though it didn't really crawl on the ground, and it's forbidden. Turning now to Amabed, Hani Tamre, if you have dates, dekada, that were in a jug, lebatra tresa yarchashata. Now, what's the problem? If now you have worms that are in dates, that are in a jug. Now, they've been in a jug for a while, but you don't know if the worms were there before or not. So the question is, do you have to worry that there's worms there, and do you have to check them, and if there are, do you have to take them out? So, lebatar tresa yarchashata, if it's already been in this jug for 12 months, Sharyan, they're permitted. Why? Because these creatures, these tolaim, we just learned, don't last more, they don't have bones, so they don't last more than 12 months, according to Rav Huna, and that explains the statement of Shmuel. Because, what's the story? After 12 months, you can assume, now the assumption is, according to many of the commentaries, they even disintegrate. They're not just that they die after 12 months, but they completely disintegrate. So if you have worms in here that are still alive after 12 months, then they're fine, those worms, because they've never been on the ground, because they were created they kind of came about in the date, and they were never shoretz ala aretz, so they're not the shretzim that are forbidden to eat. Okay, that's why I said you're going to find out there's certain kind of worms you can eat. I don't know if I recommend it. But, right, if they came from the ground, would have disintegrated by now, because it's been in the jug for 12 months. Okay, Amar Rav, if we're already talking about lifespan, Rav says, late baka bar yoma, there's no such thing as a mosquito who lives more than a day, v'leit didva bat shata, and there's no flies who live more than a year. Okay, lifespan of a mosquito is a day. Lifespan of a fly is a year. So Amalei Rav Papa Abaye says, Rav Papa says to Abaye, wait a minute. Ha amrei nashe, but people have a quip that they say. Okay, an expression they use that goes like this: Shev shnei imra, for 7 years. Shev shnei, 7 years. Imra bakta mibaka. The bakta, the female mosquito, rebelled against the male mosquito, meaning her husband, so to speak, okay, for 7 years. Why was her rebellion all about? To Amrle, she said to him, Chazite levar mechoza. I saw a man from Mechoza. Okay, now, Rashi says this whole thing is a mashal, a parable for the people of Mechoza that were very spoiled and wealthy. Okay, and you're going to see what they're going to say about them. But anyway, there was a person, this is really the mosquito and her she is talking to her husband, criticizing him, and the whole thing is really a critique on the people of Mechoza, and that's why they mention a person from Mechoza in the story. But I saw a man from Mechoza, Desacha b'maya, he was swimming in the water, Uslik ikrach b'stinin, and he got out and he put on he wrapped himself with a sheet, Ve'etevat alei, and you sat on him, umatzet minei, and you sucked blood out of him. I saw you do this. V'lo hodatli, and you didn't tell me. You didn't share the blood with me. You had so much blood, and you didn't share a thing with me. And that's why she rebelled against her husband. For 7 years. Now, why'd they bring this? Because a mosquito doesn't live more than a day. How could it be that people say about this mosquito that she rebelled against her husband for 7 years? Now, obviously, it's just a parable, but still, Rav Papa says, why would you bring an example for something that's completely unrealistic? Now, the nimshal of this, the meaning of the parable is that the people in Mechoza have everything they want, but they don't share it even with their close relatives. Okay. Anyway, Amrle, so Abai says back to him, you're complaining, you're saying that doesn't make any sense, but what about this one? In other words, I'm going to throw another question at you. Shitimane parzala, there's 600 100 dinarim coins, okay, 60,000 dinarim of barzel, weight, okay, the weight of 60,000 dinarim in the weight of iron, okay, iron dinarim. Tulule labaka bekornase. It's on the stinger of the mosquito, it hangs there, okay? Mi'ika, iugufe, right, could that really be true, right? Iugufe kamahave, right, how big is a mosquito? You can't possibly have 600,000 dinars of weight on the mosquito's stinger, okay, there's no way. Ela b'money. Okay, now what's that talking about, by the way? That the mosquito is like a little thing and you think it's nothing, but it causes a huge amount of pain when it stings you, like 600,000 coins worth, okay? But it's like, so some people compare it to lashon hara. Talk badly about someone, it seems like something so light, like a mosquito, but it causes a lot of pain, okay? It could really cause terrible things to happen. Anyway, the point being that this is not a realistic statement. Ela b'money did too. They mean now this is an interesting way of saying it. It's the money of mosquitoes. Now it's all relative. Okay? This is just saying compared to the weight of the mosquito itself, right? It's got, the stinger's heavy. Hachanami b'shnei ditu. When they mean 7 years, it's years in the life of mosquito years. Okay? If a mosquito lives a day, then 7 years is like a long time of the day, relatively speaking. Okay? But don't take that seriously in terms of saying, obviously mosquitoes live for more than 7 years. No, they don't. Okay, Tananata. Now we're going to quote a Mishnah. We're back to issues of treifa. Behema ba'alat chamesh raglayim, o she'en la ela shalosh. If you have an animal with 5 legs or 3 instead of 4, harei zemum. This is a blemish. Okay, first we're talking about for sacrifices. And Amar Rav Huna lo shanu elach shechasir v'yater biyad. Now it says it's a mum, meaning the animal's kosher, but it's blemished. That's only if you're talking about the front legs. Okay, that's the yad, the front legs. Because the front legs, if you're missing a leg, it's not a treifa. Okay? And therefore, if you have an additional one, it's also not a treifa. Aval chasir v'yater beregel treifa nami havya. But if you're missing, or even if you have an extra leg in the back, if you have 3 legs in the back, right, total of 5, well, it's also a treifa. My taima, what's the reason? Kol yater kinatul dami. What Rav Huna says, and now this is going to lead us to all sorts of other statements and questions about extra things. Anything extra is as if it's not there. And therefore, it's like it's missing a leg, even though it has an extra one. So, it's going to be a treifa. So now we're going to have a whole bunch of situations. There was an animal that had 2, okay, this is called it's like the beginning of the large intestine, but it connects apparently between the small intestine and the colon. It was some extra piece that doesn't usually exist. I told Ravina v'tarfa midrav Huna. So they showed it to Ravina. He said, "This is extra. Anything that's extra is as if it's not there, and as if there's something missing. And we're going to call this animal a treifa." Now, if the liquid from one, like these things help move things along. If what goes through one goes then right through the other, and they're connected to each other, then it's totally fine. In other words, this had two of them. You're only supposed to have one, and it had two. So now, if they pour from one to the other, then it's just like one long one, and then it's fine. But if there's two separate ones, then it's a problem. Hahi guvta dehavi nafka mi beit kase lehuvlila. Now we get to the ones. This is why I was confused. There was like a pipe kind of thing, a tube that led from the beit kase to the huvlila. Huvlila is the hemses. These are the second stomach to the third stomach. Savar Rav Ashi l'mitrafa. Rav Ashi said, okay, this doesn't exist in animals in general. I should make this a treifa because it's something additional that doesn't belong there. Amar le Rav Huna mar Barchia le Rav Ashi. But Rav Huna, the son of Barchia, says to Rav Ashi, Kol hani cheva barayata hachi lehu. But all these animals that live in the wild, they actually have this part. In other words, there is some animals that have this. So this isn't unusual that it's considered. It has an extra. And therefore, he said it's really permitted. Okay, remember, there's four stomachs. The bekase is the second one. The kares is the first one. So now there was this tube that led from the second one to the first one. This was after they had the first case, then they had this other case. So the second to the third, we said, well, there are all these wild animals that have this in them, right? That's like evolution, right? Things evolve differently. So those animals somehow ended up with this, and therefore, if this animal has it, it's not considered extra. Now there was this extra tube that went from the second to the first stomach. Savar Mar Bar Avashi lachshure. So Mar Bar Avashi said this should be permitted based on the previous. Amar le Rav Ushaya, atu kulu b'chad machita machtinu. What, you're hitting them all with one stick? Hechad itmar, hechad lo itmar. Where it was said that there are animals that have this, so it was said that was between the second and the third stomach. But no animals, we never heard anybody say there's animals who have from the second to the first. That's really unnecessary, and that should be a treifa. Okay, so when they wanted to make it a treifa, then someone responded, no, it's not a treifa. This one they wanted to say was good, and then they said, no, it's not good. He'ivra Natan bar Shila, Rab Tabachaya did Tzipori. Okay, so Natan bar Shila was a head tabach in Tzipori, right, the head shochet. Testified before Rabbi, Lifnei Rabbi, al shnei b'nei me'ayim hayotzim min ha'be'ema ke'echad. She treifa. Okay, there were two intersections, right, inner stomachs here that came out. Okay, there were two, it seemed to be two paths coming out. Let me just check the English that I have this right. Sorry, 1 second. There were two intestines that exited the obomasum of the animal as one. Okay, there were these two intestines that came out. Okay, so I guess it was two intestines. And then, right, so again, if you say extra means as if you're missing one, that would be a major problem. So he says, if they come out of an animal, it's a treifa, but kinegdam ba'of, but if it were that way in a bird, it would be okay. Now we're going to have a hacha b'mayaskina. What exactly is the case then? Okay, so what they're going to say is that it's common in birds that this would happen, and that's why it's okay in birds. So now they say, what's this case? If they come out at two different points. However, if they come out from one place and they finish and they come together and they're both together the thickness of one finger's breadth, then it's fine. Because then it's like before. If they pour into one another, they're basically together and they work together. So now they're going to say like this. Pliga bar Ravami v'Ravasi. But there was a machloka between Ravami and Ravasi. Chadamar hu dahadre v'arve. V'chadamar afal gav de lo hadre v'arve. So one said that's when they get entangled with each other. They go back together and get entangled. And the other one says even if they don't get entangled together. Okay, now this doesn't really make sense according to what we just said. Because we said, what do you mean? They come together ad ke'etz, but then it's okay. So Gemara is going to say, Bishlam Alamanda Amar Dahadre Va'arve. The one who says when they come back together, that's when it's going to be kosher. Hainu Dekatane Ad Ke'etz. But that's exactly what they said. When they come back together, and they're the thickness of a finger. But Elalamanda Amar Afagav De Lo Hadre Va'arve. The one who says even if they don't combine together, well then how could you say Ad Ke'etzba, right? My Ad Ke'etzba. What does it mean until they come back together, right? Where they're in etzba? That doesn't make any sense. It said they don't even have to come back together. So, ad ke'etzba milamata. What they mean is, they don't have to be intertwined when they come out from where they are. We have these two intestines kind of coming, But at the end, before they come out of the rectum, then they have to be, before they pass the food out of the rectum, then they have to be entangled together. If they don't come entangled together ad ke'etzba at that point, then even the one who says they don't have to be entangled still would have to say they have to be at the end they do, just not before that. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Okay, now that was just a whole bunch of cases of extra things, and are they considered treifa or not? Rabbi Yehuda says, "In nitlaha notza psula." If the feathers come off the bird, then it's disqualified, right? This is like the feathers are to the bird, like the hide is to the animal. The hide protects the animal. Without that, it's a treifa. Here it's Rabbi Yehuda saying, also without the feathers, it's a treifa. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbi Yishmael amru davar echad. This is a favorite thing to do. Say, oh, there's two different opinions, but they're actually based on the same thing, right? In two completely different sugyas. So, one is here, Rabbi Yehuda hadamaran, that's our case. Rabbi Yishmael, ditnam, Rabbi Yishmael omer, hanotzat mitztarefet. Okay, Rabbi Yishmael says in, where is this? It's Mishnah in Tarot. The notzah is mitztarefet lepigul. When you do pigul, which means you have a thought while you're slaughtering the bird, the Kohen slaughtering the bird, does malika. He has this thought that he's going to actually burn the bird on the altar at the wrong time, or eat the bird, or whatever is happening to this bird. He's going to do it at the wrong time. Now, you have to have this thought about a kazayit. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, the feathers count in our counting of the kazayit. Okay, so now we're going to say, it's the same thing. It's like a central part of the body. If it's a central part of the body, it's a central part of the body for pigul as well. But Rava says, I don't know that I believe you that these are the same machloket. Dilma lohi, you could say like this. He said it for treifa, because without the feathers, there's nothing protecting the bird. It's just like the hide. But when it comes to pigul, it's really not part of the meat, okay, not of the bird. Also, you could suggest that maybe Rabbi Yishmael said it there, that it's like part of the bird, because elinyan ipagule. But linyan treifa igune lemlegin. In other words, maybe you say, look, the bird includes whatever part of the bird, the feathers as well. But when you're talking about treifa, maybe you say the feathers don't protect. It's not like the hide. Okay, so the fact that they said this in one place doesn't really mean they're going to say it in the other place as well. Okay, moving now to the next Mishnah. Now we're going to have all sorts of things that make the animal very sick, but not a treifa, because no part of their body has a hole in it or something broken or something like that. Okay? Achuzat, and this is like we talked about the misukenet. It's going to die soon. So these animals will probably die soon, but they're not considered treifas. But we're going to have another category in the Mishnah that you're not going to be able to eat, not because it's a treifa, but because it's actually dangerous. So we're going to have two sections of the Mishnah. Achuzat adam, if the animal has a ton of blood and is choking up blood, or meushenet, or it inhaled a lot of smoke, or mitzunenet, got freezing cold from something and is suffering from the cold. Shachla hardufni, it ate something that was poisonous. Now we're going to see later, it's poisonous for animals, not for humans. Shachlat so'at tarnagolim, it ate the feces of roosters. Okay, that apparently also gets them sick. Osha shatat mayim ara'im, water that was left uncovered, and maybe the snake put its venom in it. Kshera. Okay, that's all kosher, meaning it's not a treifa, and you can eat it. Achlas samamavet, but if it ate poison, or it got a snake bite, muteret mishum treifa, it's not a treifa, because again, there's no hole in the body or anything, but asura mishum sakanat nefashot, but it's actually dangerous to eat these things because it could be you'll die from them. A samamavet, a poison is poison for humans also. If the poison's of the animal and you eat the animal, you're eating the poison. Same thing with the poison that came from the snake. So Amar Shmuel, the Gemara starts with Shmuel, who says, Hilitach chiltit treifa. If you fed a chiltit, the animal, it's a treifa. Okay, because that's going to make a hole in the animal. Okay, it's going to make that's what the Gemara is going to say right now. My taima deminak v'leilamayna. It's going to basically make a hole in one of the intestines. Mativ Rav Shizbi. Rav Shizbi says, wait, chiltit makes it a treifa? Look at what Shmuel said. But there's a different braita that seems to say otherwise. And this is going to sound very much like our Mishnah, but add a few things. Achuzat adam v'amushenet, right, the blood and the smoke. V'shachla ardufni, it ate the poison. V'achlat so'at tarnagolin, these are all in our Mishnah. Shatat mayim ara'im, that's exactly like our Mishnah. Hilita, you fed a ti'ah, which we don't know yet what that is. We'll see that tomorrow. Chiltit upilpulin, okay, the main thing for our purpose is the chiltit. Achla samamavet, or a samamavet, poison, kshera. Okay, the samamavet is going to be a problem also because our Mishnah said it's actually you can't eat it because of danger. Hikisha nachash o shenashcha kelev shoteh muteret mishum treifa v'asara mishum sakanat nefashot. If a snake bites it, or a wild dog or a crazy dog, then it's a treifa. It's not a treifa, but you can't eat it because it's dangerous because you get poisoned. So anyway, the point being here, this braita creates two problems. One, kashe chiltid a chiltid. It said chiltid is not a treifa, and Shmuel said chiltid was a treifa. So the first problem with this braita is it contradicts Shmuel. Okay, and the problem with Shmuel really, who says something against the braita. Kashe samamavet, a samamavet. It also contradicts our Mishnah because this said samamavet, the animal's kshira, and our Mishnah said don't eat it because of sakanat nefashot. It's dangerous. So we'll end our daf with this. Chiltid a chiltid lo kashe, that's not a problem. Kam ba'alim, kam b'katim. The leaves of the chiltid are not so dangerous, but the slices of it are. Okay? So the one where it said don't eat, right, it's treifa, is because if you eat the slices of it, that makes holes in the animal. But just the leaves don't do anything, and that, again, makes it, get sick, but it's not going to create holes in the body. Samamavet, lo kasha hadida hada adam. There's samamavet, there's two kinds of samamavets. One is poison only for animals. Some things are poisonous for animals, but not for humans. And then there's ones that are poison for humans as well. If they're poison for humans as well, then we can't eat the animal because we could die. If they're poison only for animals, then the animal might get sick from it, but it's not going to make it a treifa, and we can eat the animal then. Samamavet behema hainu hardufni. But wait, if you're saying it's just samamavet because it's poisonous for the animal, not for humans, well, it already lists hardufni, which is the same thing. So then the braita lists hardufni and it lists samamavet, but they're really one and the same. So the Gemara says no. Trei gavne samamavet. There's two types of samamavets. One is called samamavet and one is called a hardufni. They're both similar, that they're poison for animals, not for humans, but they're two different kinds, and that's why they're listed as two different items. Okay, with that we finish our daf. We'll get back to what is ti'ah. Okay, we'll get to that tomorrow. Okay, what we did is we had two versions of a maimer. Which case of a treifa or a suffix treifa of a bird was he telling about, and the eggs that come out of it, and which eggs you can eat, which eggs you can't eat, and then that affected the machlok at Rebbe Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua that we saw, and how we understood it. Then we have, and that all is based on the two versions of a maimer, whether you think a treifa could get pregnant and give birth or can't. Then we have Rav Huna, who started to talk about a bria that doesn't have a bone won't survive more than 12 years. From that we got into the mosquitoes and those parables that we saw. And then we got to a list of possible extra. We said anything, Rav Huna said anything extra is as if it's missing it. So certain kind of things that were extras in animals that had to do with the intestines or things that connected between the different stomachs. Is the animal a treifa or not? We had different opinion, right? We had differences of opinion and also different cases where some were, some weren't, depending on whether it's normal in the animals to have it or, even if it's rare, but there are animals that have it, then it's not a treifa. If there aren't, then it becomes a treifa. Then we had the feathers, and we tried to connect Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Ishmael's position about pigul, but we said maybe they're really not connected. Rava, anyway, didn't like the connection. And then we got to the Mishnah about all the two different categories of animals that aren't treifas, even though they might die soon, and animals that may not be treifas, but you can't eat them because they're dangerous. And with that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.